So the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra versus the iPhone 16 Pro. I'm in the French Alps right now. It is absolutely stunning here, as you guys can see. Therefore, it's the perfect place to put these two cameras through their paces. Right now, we're looking at the front-facing selfie camera. In terms of differences, definitely the iPhone is looking a little bit warmer right now. I'll be switching back and forward between the audio on both phones so you can kind of get a feel for the different microphone setups. In terms of detail, the Samsung actually looks quite a lot sharper, so we'll be able to see in post whether that actually remains true. So in terms of stabilization, I'm actually just going to run around, bearing in mind I'm on snow. So hopefully this will give you an idea on how things are looking stabilization wise. And one other note is that the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is definitely further zoomed in than the iPhone, so that's going to be an order of preference as well. Let's move on to those rear facing cameras. So I probably don't have to tell you guys that the only piece of new hardware on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is the new ultra-wide sensor. It's bumped from a 12 megapixel to now a 50 megapixel sensor, and that matches the iPhone's, which is also a 50 megapixel sensor. I don't know about you guys, I definitely feel like the biggest difference in all of these photos is actually the white balance. The iPhone continually coming out quite almost like yellow and green, the Samsung looking much closer to life in my opinion. If we take a look at this image here, I think this one is immediately obvious. You can see like the exposure difference on the face. The iPhone is certainly allowing this to be just a little bit more natural. The Samsung is a little bit more processed, but it does actually come out definitely looking nicer, faster. I think there's an important note here though, is that Apple has something called Photographic Styles, which if you weren't to like a way that your iPhone was shooting, you can actually customize the way that it takes photos and even customize these images in post. You can see that I'm changing this image here. I'm not just changing a filter here. This is really changing the way that Apple's processing is actually working on this image. It's a really fantastic feature, genuinely. Samsung has something similar, but it's not quite to the same standard as Photographic Styles. Samsung does have this though, and I am an absolute sucker for a 200 megapixel shot. I know it's not particularly functional, but just being able to zoom from here to here is just so cool. Having that option, and I think the way that they pixel bin down is really good and really useful. Yeah, I'm a 200 megapixel fan. I wanted to test normal video stabilization, so this is not log. We will get on to log recording shortly because of course that's one of the new main features of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, but this is just standard video. And I think what's actually really interesting is if you look at this, obviously the iPhone shoots fantastic video in both video and in ProRes log. No surprise really that the iPhone has done well here, but what's really interesting is if we switch to the Samsung, the stabilization I would say is kind of just as good. I just don't think there's just something missing about the Samsung video for me, but what's interesting is that the white balance issue that we talked about before is actually almost like reverse. Things are looking much more yellow and green on the Samsung this time, and these all were just auto settings, and this actually remains true here as well so it wasn't just almost like a one-off anomaly, is that definitely the Samsung is looking much more green. The iPhone is true to life here, so it's definitely the opposite of what we were seeing in photos. So one of the main advantages of the Samsung over the iPhone is the zoom potential. You simply get more reach on the Samsung, so we're just going to put this to the test. Luckily, the beautiful location, mountains, means it's perfect for zoom lenses. So let's take one at 1x. We can go to the 2x, which is a digital crop on the iPhone. Take that one. We'll go the same thing. And then we only have a 5x option on the iPhone. You're gonna get a 3x optical zoom, which is a lower quality lens than the others on the set, but at least it is optical. Then we'll go to 5x, we can take the same shot on both phones. And then on the Samsung, we get the option to zoom in to 10x. We can go up to 30x, take one there. And then just for fun, we'll go up to 100x and just see what this looks like. Probably not very good. Let's take one there. Whereas on the iPhone, what we can do is we zoom right in. We're gonna hover around 10x here. And then the next maximum zoom range on the iPhone is the 25 times. Samsung has always struggled with motion capture, particularly in their telephoto lenses. So I wanted to sort of put that up to the test a little bit. This is obviously not a scientific side-by-side test, but I do actually think the improved processor in the S25 Ultra is helping reduce shutter lag and capture motion as it's happening, particularly with that telephoto. Obviously, these were in decent light and definitely need some additional testing, but it was good to see
see this on the same level as the iPhone here.
So at various points in the video, you might have seen this case that I'm using on my iPhone 16 Pro. This is a case by ESR, who are the sponsor of today's video, and this is the Halolock Classic Hybrid case for the iPhone 16 series. It comes with a couple of really useful features. First of all is this camera protection unit at the top, which actually doubles as a stand. Not only is it keeping the optics of your iPhone nice and safe, you can also just prop this stand out, and you can use that as an entertainment stand, no problem. And next, and this is something I personally really care about, is it has full camera control protection. So if you don't know, if you damage your camera control button on the iPhone, it can basically cost you up to $750 to repair, so it's like no joke. And a lot of the cases actually just basically use this as a cutout, whereas this case by ESR has got really high quality materials actually covering the control button itself, and that means first of all it's protected, but second of all it does not interfere at all with the performance of the camera control button. You still get full fluid feedback on this case. It's absolutely brilliant. Not to mention the case itself is extremely thin. It really doesn't interfere with your kind of experience of using the phone, whilst being extremely protective as well. So thank you so much to ESR for sponsoring this video. If you want to check this case out, it will be down below in the description. Let's get back to the comparison. So one of the most significant changes this year is actually a software feature, and it's the inclusion of Samsung Log. So of course we have to put the new Samsung Log side by side with Apple Log.
So whilst I'm extremely excited that Samsung have put this on their phone, I don't know right now about the implementation. So what I've done, just because I think it's useful for you guys to see, is I've shown the flat profile and then I've shown the color corrected version. This is Samsung's official LUT that is basically supposed to correct it to something called Rec 709, so normal kind of video picture colors. And you can see that first of all the saturation is just all over the place. Look at the skin tones here. Very, very strange, to be honest. I don't know why Samsung is doing that. If you actually take this clip and you reduce the saturation by 30%, things actually start looking quite nice. So that's definitely a tip. If anyone is shooting log, for some reason, sometimes the saturation is coming out kind of crazy. Like if you look at this is the Apple Log shot. This was shot in Blackmagic Camera app, and in my opinion, just looks absolutely beautiful. It doesn't look like smartphone footage, but the colors are far more muted than the Samsung colors. Everything's far less clinical here. The footage looks really beautiful. And so we have some completely side by side. The Samsung here on the left, I haven't changed the saturation here. So this is the kind of just the correction LUT over the top, and then the same for the iPhone, but I have done just a little exposure adjustment just to get things looking a bit truer to life, how I would kind of actually grade them. This one's pretty close. The only significant difference for me is that on the flare looks better on the iPhone. It's a bit more how a professional camera would handle light flares. On the Samsung, things look a bit crunchy.
Okay, one of the new changes this year is the inclusion of something called Audio Eraser. And the iPhone actually has something called Audio Mix, and these features are handled a little bit differently. So we are in a very, very noisy environment. I have a massive river behind me. So we're just going to be switching backwards and forwards, seeing how the different modes and different kind of audio features behave on the different phones. So we'll see how the audio mix is able to isolate my voice. There's some tools and construction going on in the background now as well. Something important to note is that the phones actually handle the kind of audio feature and audio erasing in different ways. The Samsung is more geared towards actually being able to remove specific aspects of your audio, whereas the iPhone is more about focusing on individual speakers, or kind of like surround sounds and that type of thing. So if you're at a concert with the Galaxy S25 Ultra, you might be able to remove the crowd noise, for instance, and focus on the performer. And that's different to the way Apple handles things.
All right, so before we move on to low light, I'm actually going to just go through some skin tones, some selfies, and then of course some portrait mode. But just so we kind of get some differences in skin tones, obviously lots of people are interested in generally how different phones handle different skin tones when they're taking selfies. If we take a look at this shot here, we'll zoom in right on my face. You can see the differences here. I think it's pretty obvious. There's a pretty consistent theme actually here, is that the Samsung CNOT optimizer on, the colors are looking really really nice straight out of camera. You'd probably have to tweak the saturation on the iPhone images to get things looking very similar, but the textures are actually better on the iPhone, and definitely you get more skin detail and things like that. The Samsung is trying to smooth things out. Okay, and throwing a couple of portraits up, apart from the white balance issue that we've previously talked about, or the white balance differences, because I think actually overall both images look great. When there is a clearly defined subject, the subject is easily isolated and both images look fantastic. I've really taken one for the team here, and I got a request in the comments asking to compare curly hair, so that is what I've done. There's a reason my hat doesn't come off when my hair is this long, but you can see clearly there are differences between the cutout quality. The iPhone has done a better job with my hair. There are far more kind of cutout errors, so that's something to bear in mind if you take portrait images of this nature. Okay, and moving on to low light. I know a lot of you guys have probably been waiting for this. So first we'll do photos, then we'll move on to low light video. This is an ultra wide image. To be honest, they're kind of both as bad as each other. Ultra wides never do fantastically in low light. There really was not a lot of light here, and I'm obviously choosing something difficult with a moving image. The Samsung definitely kind of tries to crunch the sky, make things look a little bit darker, but overall I have to say I prefer the iPhone here. This one photo of me just kind of stood far-ish back. I think very, very even. Maybe the iPhone just a little bit more natural, looks a bit more real, but then when we moved close up, there are significant differences. You can see that the skin tones and everything looks just far more natural this time on the iPhone. The Samsung definitely looks a bit over-processed here. It's trying to rescue my face. And then it's worth noting that sometimes you can get some kind of strange results from the Samsung. That's what happened here. Of course, this can happen with any camera in low light, but you can just see how much processing is going on my face to try and almost like rescue this image. Okay, and we move on to low light video, which is actually one of the features that Samsung was touting on the S25 Ultra. The new processor was supposed to drastically help with this, and I don't know how much I believe that. I guess we could put it up against the S24 Ultra and see how improved that was, so hit the like button on this video and let me know with a comment if you'd like to see that. There certainly was not a lot of light. You can see just there with the ultra wide, clearly there's not a lot of light in this scene, so it's impressive, I guess, that the phones are actually making this kind of at least usable footage versus like it's not incredibly noisy or anything like that. There definitely is a theme here, and it's that the iPhone wants a more even exposure. It actually wants the scene to be brighter, but it does handle that with kind of natural skin tones, and everything does look just better on the iPhone, I have to admit here. The Samsung is not bad, certainly in this scene here. This is more than usable footage, but you can just see how much it wants to crunch everything, and it is overcompensating with the amount of processing in the image. The iPhone is still looking more natural. I will say though, if you were to have done this comparison maybe a couple of generations ago, the iPhone was going to smoke the Samsung, so it's definitely really good to see Samsung certainly catching up and making a lot of progress, specifically when we're talking about videos on this phone. And then finally, to round this off, I want to talk about the lens flare issue, because I hate this. It is one of my worst things about shooting with smartphone cameras. Look at these halos and ghosting. It is honestly shocking. Both phones are affected pretty badly, but the iPhone is significantly worse. You can see way more reflections than you can on the S25 Ultra. So if you hate these just as much as me, that might be something you want to bear in mind. So that's that. Who do you think won? Let me know with a comment down below. And if you're interested, you can check out how the S25 Ultra did against my professional $5,000 camera.